introduce themselves, I think I'd like to maybe just jump right into the conversation. I found through the years as this AI buzzword was gaining traction, revenue management, sort of traditionally being a discipline that leveraged predictive analytics, data science, big data, always seemed to be on the cutting edge of the trend. So when we got excited about big data and analytics, we talked about big data and analytics and revenue management. We got excited about AI, it was AI and revenue management. So as a discipline that's sort of been rumored to be leveraging all of these advanced analytics all along, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how we see AI in the various flavors of tools and solutions that support revenue strategy. So we could start, I guess, with the kind of the core foundation of a revenue strategy, which is the revenue management system. So, Klaus, you want to talk a little bit about have we always had AI in RMS? What kind of AI is in there? How does these systems typically think about AI?
Yeah, AI is older than me, which says a lot. And it was actually born before I was. We're talking about movies later, but 2001 Space Odyssey, if anyone is familiar with that movie, was released in 1968 and was talking about how astronauts speak with HAL, AI-powered personality, who obviously then create some havoc. So 1968, they were already talking about speaking with a computer. So 50 years later, we're just getting all excited about it, which is weird, but just shows how long things take to change. So revenue management system's been around for 35 years or more. And the value is really that there's a lot of data out there, 5 million pricing decisions that a typical hotel has to make on an annual basis. And in order to make these decisions 24/7, 365 days a year, you can do it with a human, but you're probably better off having some automation and some science built into it. So at Ideas, we make 18 billion pricing decisions every day, and we deliver those before 8 a.m. Local time to every single hotel around the world. And that's up from 15 billion last year. So just in the last 12 months, we added on 3 billion decisions, and it just keeps increasing. So the amount of data is staggering, and the amount of computer power and the amount of analytics you need to turn that data into, in our case, pricing decisions, forecasting decisions, inventory decisions, is quite substantial. And I read an article this morning that OpenAI will need hundreds of billions of dollars to keep building their infrastructure over the next few years, and they'll need government help to do that. So I think we're all looking towards a huge amount of spending in AI, generative AI architecture over the next few years.
Yeah, I think it was, I appreciated Chris's intro this morning because I think it's important to sort of understand the different flavors of AI and what we're talking about. And I think when Klaus is talking about the vast amount of data and what a revenue management system needs to go through to calculate a price, this has been an example of that predictive AI that Chris was talking about for years. And of course, when Gen AI comes on the scene, I think we can see a change and sort of some opening up of opportunities around the revenue management problem. But I guess, Chinmai, you sort of stepped into the airline world a little bit here too. So anything that you're seeing on that side and in terms of evolution that'd be interesting to use as an example?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think even though I'm not on the airline side, but Sabre in general has a big presence in the airline industry. And we have a long partnership with Google. Luckily, I'm not developing those tools. I'm just on the user end. So thanks to our partnership, I think, and Google, as you know, is an AI-first company. So some of the recent product launches, which are pretty interesting, we've launched something called Sabre Mosaic, which is under our broader travel AI category of products. And I think the fundamentals are pretty much the same that all of us know. A lot of us grew up in revenue management. So it's about segmenting the customers to the nth degree. And then, understanding price sensitivity. I think where AI makes it a little bit easier is just like Klaus mentioned, millions of data points, and how do you make sense of it? And there's no way that you can do it in a manual way. So the products that Sabre is launching are broadly in. We have a product called Air IQ, Upgrades IQ, Bundle IQ, Ancillary IQ, anything that can optimize the fares for the airlines to the nth degree. And the good thing is that the technology platform is relatively light. So we're not asking the suppliers to completely rehaul everything. It's an optimization layer that can sit on top of what you have. And I think that makes it a big differentiator. So I would say that our partnershap with Google has really helped in that area. And then we have a dedicated department called Sabre Labs, and we try to leave them alone without the regular influences of running a multi-billion-dollar company. And they're able to actually spend time, quality time, developing these, putting them in production, and then taking them to our customers.
Partnerships being important. I think so. We think about the ability now of the systems that leverage the predictive analytics and AI to generate a price based on segmentation, market trends, market demand. But I always, I mean, and I love that. I studied that in school, and I love a beautiful algorithm that calculates a perfect price. It's one of my great joys in life. But what I've sort of come to realize is if nobody sees that price, then there's no point in calculating it, right? You got to get it out there into the market, and when it gets out to the market, it meets the customer, and you have to understand how the customer is going to view that price in context of all the information out there. So I think that one of the places where we're seeing a lot of innovation these days is really in that merchandising and kind of channel management. So I wonder if you might comment a little bit on some of the trends you're seeing and how AI is playing a part. It's not just about connecting A and B anymore, is it? It's going a little deeper than that.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we've been working on over the last couple of years is understanding, how we can enable hotels to better distribute the rates that AI is coming through partnerships like Ideas, and get the rate to the right person at the right time. It's about having. It's all very well saying, hey, look, the data. This is how much you should be selling your room, but there's other factors in terms of how much visibility those rates are getting and those inventories are getting. So one of the pieces that we as Siteminder, we're sitting on 18 years worth of data, and I think as Chris related to it in an earlier session, the data is meaningless unless you can actually do something with it and whether it's structured in the right way. So we've spent the last couple of years making sure that the data we're doing is accessible. We're moving it all into Databricks, which is making sure that the AI models can actually use it effectively. And what we're currently doing is we're using the predictive analytics. We're bringing in data from other areas like Predict HQ, so we can start seeing what are the trends going on in the local regions. So, for example, for any one hotel, rather than just saying, hey, look, here's the rate coming from Ideas, we can say, well, look, here's the rate, but also here's a whole bunch of opportunities based on what we're seeing that you might be missing out on, and here's where you might want to change your distribution strategy over the short to medium term. For example, we're seeing guests coming to your region from Korea and you're not making the most of it. Or we're seeing more guests through this period booking an advanced purchase rate or a flexible rate, and you don't currently have a flexible rate for sale in these markets. So it's really taking the decisions and making the execution as easy as possible. And then I guess to the generative AI side, we're adding a contextualization against those. So we're not just saying, hey, here's an opportunity, we think you should do this. We're adding the context as to say why you should be doing this. So really educating our customers and giving them the rounded solution to enabling their distribution to go better.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we sort of, we're talked about starting with that foundational layer of where the price is calculated and how you leverage all of that data, and then as you kind of grow past that, how does that get out through the distribution channels? And I know, Cindy, I'm going to turn this to you, because as you start to kind of creep past that core, okay, we're going to calculate a price based on demand and put that price out there. You hear this conversation about, well, what is the different flavors of demand and what the market opportunity is, and this is sort of leading us around to this topic of commercial strategy, which I know you and I have talked about a lot, but the industry is talking about a lot too, and this notion of is the lines blurring once the responsibility for just picking a price is off the revenue manager's shoulder, and revenue strategy really being more about how do you identify market opportunity and pull the right levers. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of that evolution and how some of this new or even existing algorithmic approaches are facilitating that a little bit.
Sure. So the thing that's changed a lot, and Chris Hemmeter mentioned it today, that a lot of the AI applications are for doing the same things that have been done, and we just plug in AI models to do the pricing or other things that have existed. And I would argue that it's time to blow the whole go-to-market up, because what used to be the model to pursue top-line revenue and pricing was one of the major levers, we now have to focus more on profitability, which gets into channel mix, and it gets into business mix in terms of segmentation. And all of a sudden, we're looking more broadly, not just at reacting to incoming demand and then trying to get the best price or the correct inventory allocation, but what should we even go after BT business, or should we go after, corporate BT business, but not the ones that come through GDS, the ones that come directly? Like the decisions about even the business coming into the funnel and making sure that we have the most profitable mix, because the difference in your mix can make the difference between, millions of dollars in growing asset value. So the industry has focused so heavily on top-line revenue, and I think there was an owner who was asking about some questions about where the OTAs are going and all of those costs. The mix of business that you get, if it's not the most profitable mix, you could be spinning your wheels. So you bring more business in, but then you have nothing to show for it, so to speak. So the algorithms to be able to address that is a very excellent use of AI, and it's different than the AI that's used for pricing. So we use at Kalibri Labs, we've developed algorithms using predictive AI in order to figure out what is the most profitable mix for any time period, given all the demand in the market, given what's coming, given all the forecasts, given a lot of macroeconomic factors. So it's kind of several steps beyond what has been done. So instead of just wild guessing at, let's try to get more corporate business because there's more in the market, the question is that the most profitable addition to the mix at that time to be accretive to my GOP? And so then you bring Gen AI in and you start saying, well, if that could just be served up to a general manager or served up to a commercial team, so you take your predictive AI and you kind of marry it to the conversational part where the GM once a week gets a, kind of an output that says, here's your most profitable mix for the next quarter, so build your program around that. That's very different than the AI that's just plugged into existing pricing models. But this is what commercial strategy is, and this is the direction, when I realized what was happening, that I built within Kalibri Labs, because we have to use AI to build profit and asset value. We just can't focus. Top-line revenue is just not. The world changed, and the costs are now 15 to 25% in the U.S. market to get customers. In the old days,
Chinmai is lifting his mic, and he's like, yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat too, Chinmai, but you can go first.
I don't want to say anything bad about the GDS with Chinmai sitting next to me.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to start with that. GDS is always the right channel. But I think that leads to a different complexity as well. Actually, James and I were just catching up on that point. So Cindy is absolutely right that there's a profit optimization angle. What it leads to is how the hotels and the chains should contract with all these channels as well. Because if it'll depend on your pricing and availability clauses, and if you're bound by the contracts, then it doesn't really matter. You'll know what's happening, but you can't really influence it. So that adds complexity. And the other point I just wanted to add to what James was saying is that revenue management has become quite sophisticated. So segmentation of the customers and coming up with individual pricing and propensity to buy is getting really good. Now, the problem is, how do you make it work across all the channels? And the plumbing that we have, so when I used to be on the board of Hedna, this was a big challenge that we were facing. Back in the day, the revenue management qualification was speak English, know Excel, join revenue management. And then the revenue management...
Only the middle one was the important one, the Excel. You could work with the other two, right?
Yes. And then revenue management systems started to optimize once a week, once a day. Now it's ongoing revenue management, right? And even Sabre Mosaic, for example, has continuous RM optimization. The amount of pressure it's putting on the plumbing is huge. And then we have to, in the distribution world, James and I, we have to develop caching systems to handle all that traffic. And every time you shoot a command to ChatGPT or any AI thing, it creates havoc because it's hitting multiple things, right? So not only OpenAI, I think all of us will have to do a lot more in infra.
Very, very true. And I think we all agree that we're moving towards more of a commercial strategy, commercial platform, where you plan and execute your commercial strategies. But, profit optimization, as you know, we've been trying to do that for a while, and after 5 years of talking about it and actually doing it, there's still only one CRS today that can handle profit optimization. So we started that work with a very large company, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and even after all these years, no other CRS has moved anywhere near it. So the challenges are huge, as you mentioned, right? The pipeline, the amount of data, the infrastructure that needs to be changed is quite staggering.
Well, and it won't all be automated. So some of it is offline. You have salespeople, and you have digital teams, and you have field marketing from the brand, and there's a lot of levers. You're never going to make it one big black box. So for us to think that we can make the revenue management system, bake bread and cook the dinner is just not going to happen. So you still have people that have to be deployed and decisions that even GMs in hotels have to make. So I think it's really making sure that all those different pieces come together, and that the revenue management systems, which have become really excellent over the last 5 to 10 years especially, that they are left to do what they do and let the humans do the part that you're kind of forced to do partially offline, where there's judgments and there's a lot of trade-off decisions.
Yeah, they pivoted neatly into what's constraining the problem, I think, which is real, is with all this, with all the data, with all the opportunity to start pricing at a very detailed level, you have to be able to push the prices out, and I think we are constrained a bit by the technology that surrounds us. I don't know if Chinmai pointed down, said you were having the conversation around it. I don't know if you wanted to add anything about kind of the pressures that are on the distribution system and how things maybe are evolving to meet some of these abilities, right, that we're now having with the new technology.
Yeah, I mean, look, the distribution platforms today, or if you look at them as channel management, or as we look at ourselves as more as a revenue optimization, distribution just becomes one element. And I think the common issue across all of these that we hear today and that we've heard over the last weeks, months, and since AI, is the silo of data. And we're not looking to take away the decision. We're looking to bring the silos of those data, whether it's the analytics, the market intelligence, the revenue management, and bring that into a more central place where it can be understood, whether it's, and whether that understanding is being elevated through contextual AI or generative AI. But it really is a meld of the predictive analytics that comes through from RMS, the insights that comes from something like Kalibri Labs, the distribution that's coming through Sabre or through Siteminder, and all of the data points that we get through those, and having a model that can actually bring those together and give, we as a business aren't working with the big five, like the Hiltons, the Marriotts, and so on, but really you look to further down where you've got the smaller chains and groups and independent hotels that have similar but very different challenges with data and how they do it. They have different budgets and they have different, but they have a little bit more control over how they can approach it, what vendors they can use, and how they can bring that data together. And I think it's very well like you have the larger groups and chains who are doing a great job investing, who are able to invest and have those businesses. But I think us being able to bring those siloed data together for smaller hotel groups and businesses and give them the same tools and power. And I agree, it is about profit as much as it is about distribution. And hotels need to be able to change that lever as their business amends. So, okay, through this period, I am focusing on profit, but over this period where I have a really low demand, I need to increase that demand. I just need to get some heads in beds. And I think giving hoteliers the data that enables them to predict that and see those trends, and then giving them the opportunities that are listed against that to say, look, this is how you can make a difference.
So you said a couple, I think, really important things here that I'd love to get some perspective from the rest of the panel. And I think I see it. I heard sort of two things. The first is with every evolution, we're actually able to push more capabilities further down the chain, down to the small and independent hotels, so they have access to tools that can help them derive insights and make some of the decisions that were only accessible at the high end for people who could afford that kind of investment. So I think that is a hugely beneficial trend for our industry. But it strikes me, and this was based on some of the comments earlier, the more sort of democratized all of this is, the more that you're pushing these decisions into the hands of folks that are business-minded, but perhaps not analytically trained. I think you end up sort of, so now you've got a lot more people looking at data, and you've got more complex algorithms in the back end, which we 3 or 4 people said the term black box, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about how are you sort of balancing this thing where there's all this complexity and all these numbers, yet we want more and more folks to have access to this data to derive the right insights that move their business forward.
I think the thing you said, looking at data, that's what's going to change. Because people are not going to look at data. Think of it down the road, you'll have let's call it a commercial assistant that's automated sitting next to you, providing you with guidance and advice and inputs as you're thinking about your commercial strategies that you have, right? So you're not looking at data, you're having an agent sitting next to you that will help you guide you through that process and hopefully make the outputs and the decisions more relevant and more optimized.
And they'll be different, if you're a branded hotel, or if you're an independent, or you're with a small chain, the levers you have will differ. And, what is the optimal mix for any hotel? Really, there has to be the North Star around profitability, number one. And once you agree that profitability is the target, then you start seeing what those levers are in your world. And for some hotels, maybe the optimal amount of OTA business is 35%. And for another hotel in potentially the same market, it's 15%. But if you don't have a target that you're going for and you're just kind of, okay, I'll take anything, just fill up and I don't really care. Well, those in the old days when the costs were pretty static and we were paying 5% and nothing changed, it was fine. But that's not the world we're living in. And this AI and all the things that are happening that we just heard the last few panels talk about, they're going to add costs. I mean, these ChatGPT in the OTAs and Google and everything else, they'll be monetized. So we're going to keep paying more money. So I think the inputs are going to have to point toward profitability. I think that there will be assistance or, ChatGPT and other generative AI will provide answers. Like, it has to be served up. You're not going to have GMs in hotels looking at more or different data. It has to be translated for them. But it just has to be understood that if you are an independent, the expectation for your optimal mix and what you're going to pursue is going to be different than the next door hotel.
Well, I mean, it sounds like we're not getting away from human in the loop, so to speak, Cindy, where this is these insights, however they're coming, whether it's actually in business language delivered or through other insights. There's a person that's got to interpret that.
I think a lot of the data inputs is going to be, I mean, we all use Netflix and it will recommend you a film and at the end of it, it says, hey, did you like that? And you said, yes, I liked it, I loved it, or it wasn't for me. And I think that's really the data inputs that your GM or your operator really, we need to make sure that we're offering up those opportunities. If we as a platform give a whole bunch of recommendations with context and that user says, okay, I'm going to implement that, I'm going to implement that, we need to make sure there's a feedback loop, which includes, the humans to say, hey, here's the data, you implemented that, this is what happened. You had increased occupancy, profitability was down maybe 3%, or profitability was up 3%. Are you happy with this outcome based on what happened and through that period? And that's really just feeding back into that engine so that we can start giving hotels better decisions rather than data. They don't, that's from when you have operators who have multiple hats or where they're not a data analyst, data scientist, but they're running a business, a hotel, is like, we need to be able to pass them up decision options with context based on data from multiple silos and get that feedback loop so we can continue to make better decisions.
Yeah, to me, when I look at this, and then I'm going to encourage the panel to fight me on this one, but to me, what I get most excited about when I look at the new evolutions in Gen AI and think about the intersection with an analytical and data-heavy and model-heavy discipline like revenue management is this notion that, first of all, we can get decisions, not just I have to look at the data and figure it out. And those decisions drive action across the team. The team understands why they're taking the actions that they're taking, and you can turn a very analytical person also into a persuasive communicator that can kind of inspire the team to move forward. And this to me feels like, because you can actually describe the whys behind the action in business language. And this to me feels like the opportunity. Fight
There's
me,
two
Chinmai,
things.
you gonna fight me?
No, I won't fight with you. I'll agree with you because I think communication, as you know, in revenue management has always been a challenge. So I think the other thing is that the results will speak to themselves, and only then the ownership, the asset managers, and the commercial teams will actually fully buy in. So I think it's all moving in the right direction. But no, I don't want to fight you.
Yeah, there's
But
two
I
things.
think that
Sorry.
when you look at functions like the sales or the digital, I mean, these teams have to be fully integrated with whoever, like pricing alone will never, it's probably not going to be a specialty of a person because the systems have improved so much. So you'll have commercial leadership, and they have to drive, how many salespeople do you have and where do they go? Do they go after BT accounts or group? And digital, do we use our field marketing or do we create our own and work with our own vendors? Like all of these decisions have to be made by the team. And I think all of that is going to be collectively part of commercial strategy. But I think, a lot of like BT business is going to start coming digitally. So now the relationship, I'm going to say something nice about Chinmai because I just said something bad before.
BT is a good
So your, relationships with the channels, like which channels do you want to get your business from, and how do you curry favor with those channels? Like that's what salespeople are going to work on, is how do we enable a relationship to create bias for my hotel? That's a different discussion than salespeople going out and bringing cookies to secretaries to try to get more BT business. It's just a
there's
different function.
two pieces really, I think, that came up in the previous conversation. Is the one is context, right? You provide context when you provide information, and that makes all the difference, right? Because information without context doesn't allow you to make a decision. And then human in the loop is something that I'm really passionate about, that you've talked about earlier, and I've talked about for a few months now. There is no future that I can see where human is not going to be in the loop, right? And you'll have to have that
Good news
interaction.
for all the revenue leaders in the room.
And
myself included.
and you have
They
you
may
have
do different things, right?
Well, that's right, yeah.
you have to have that interaction between the two, the technology and the human, and you have to have somebody who can step in when things go wrong, and things do go wrong. Right? There's a great video out on TikTok, I think, where somebody's riding a Waymo self-driving taxi and getting stuck in the middle of a junction in San Francisco in the middle of the night, and the taxi just stops. And what happens is a remote human steps in and guides the taxi away from the junction and gets it going again. So it's a great example of human in the loop, where technology is great, automation is great, artificial intelligence is great, but you still need somebody in the end to make sure it works.
So I could keep asking these guys questions all afternoon, but we could take a few audience questions, and then I want to leave some time to get a future vision from these folks. So,
since humans left the Rift Valley, we've travelled for experiences, right? We don't travel to lie in a bed or have a shower. So the thing that fascinates me is that when are we going to be, as an industry, to move away from essentially a commoditized pricing, and we look at all these different things, and to be able to speak to each individual human and say, you know what, this is what we can do for you, this is the experience we can create for you, and this is the pricing and packaging that we will offer for that particular individual experience. Now, we're a long way from it, but I think Gen AI gives us the best shot at it. So how far away is the roadmap?
There's about 100.
in case the Department of Justice is listening, we're talking about packaging, not pricing per person. Packaging. Okay. Please
There's
continue.
about 150 travel planners that are Gen AI based that are in development right now. So hopefully one of them will make it. But
Well, the
Chinmai?
brands are working on this also, personalization and trying to leverage the information they know about individuals. The credit card companies are building all kinds of models, and they've created portals now to do booking through, Capital One and Citibank and JP Morgan Chase, with the idea of personalizing and being able to customize what is being offered.
Yeah,
so I think it's
think
a lot
all,
of work in that space.
Yeah, my 2 cents would be that it's already there because on the demand side, on the product side, the room rate combinations are exploding because of attribute-based selling, etc. So multiple products to sell. And then on the supply side, which is basically the people who are consuming it, we are segmenting them better. So the permutation combinations have already, increased drastically.
I think the strategy is the thing there, though. Well, if the pipes are set up to sell that way, then the next thing becomes how do you do this well, such that people really do feel like they're getting something that's tuned to them. And to me, that's the next evolution.
And the point that James was making, we need your consent as well because we need to understand what you like. Otherwise, we'll keep guessing and giving you random offers. So I think it's about consent and privacy as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think in many respects we're already there. It varies greatly whether it's through an intermediator, like through a distribution channel or direct. I think it's very strongly a direct play, but very much in the groups and chains because it just with fewer steps between property and that traveler and the guest, the opportunity to personalize is much greater.
That's a good point.
So it is a strong direct play. Whereas in this sense. So that's one of our biggest opportunities in travel right now.
Other questions? No, we're answering all the questions. Okay, well, we really do only have a few minutes left, and I think, so obviously all of you are in companies in a space where you're constantly keeping track of what's next. But I'd be interested to know, kind of personally from all of you, what is the next kind of opportunity that you see on the horizon, and what's so exciting about it? What do we have to look forward to when it comes to evolutions of AI in revenue and commercial strategy? Or in your personal life, actually, that might even be more interesting. We'll start with you.
Personally, I'm looking forward to the point where AI is organizing my life a little bit better, and getting much better at predicting what I need, both professionally and personally, and delivering that up to me in a timely manner. My timekeeping skills and management goes out the window quite often. So I'm looking forward to having that personal AI assistance, which that I haven't found yet, but I've tried a couple.
Okay, I can relate. Cindy?
I think that this move to what I call commercial strategy, which is more the integration across all of the commercial levers, sales, digital, pricing, promotion, all of that. I see the way we go to market has to change given the high cost in the market and the complexity of all these third parties that we have. So I think that instead of siloed commercial teams where you have sales and digital and revenue, coming together and having profit as the target so that we remain healthy as an industry, because all of these third-party costs are adding up and we're paying too much money for that. So I think the go-to-market approach is what is most exciting to me, and what I think will, no matter what comes in the future for third parties, and no matter how many digital tech players come in, each hotel actually can fend for themselves if they understand what's happening in their market and they can manage more effectively. So I think the go-to market in hotels is going to be forced to change over the next couple of years, and AI will be kind of the underlying engine to help make that happen.
Love that.
I'm really excited about removing friction. Technology has a lot of friction across the board. The way we interact with technology is artificial and forced on us, and Gen AI will enable all of us to move, to interact with technology much differently than today. So removing that friction I think it's going to be game-changing and really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Chinmai?
So two quick things. I agree with James. I also need a personal assistant. My favorite character, by the way, is Jarvis.
Okay, yeah.
From Iron Man, and I don't know if people know, but it stands for just a really very intelligent system. So I would love that.
Just a really very intelligent.
Yeah,
very intelligent.
that's the full
system?
form of Jarvis. Okay. Yes. So, but I think I think I'm excited about what it can do for trip planning. So I think how do you go off the beaten track within a particular time frame, within a particular spend of money, etc. That's quite a complex thing without using tech. So there are some companies that are making some good headway there. I'm on the advisory board of a company that does that. takes your profile into full detail, and then makes recommendations that if you're going to, Italy for a week long, this is what you should do. So I think it has so many of data points that I think tech is going to make that very fruitful.
I love that. Well, I guess in closing, what I would say is that I hope that all these evolutions in AI don't replace the role of a moderator on the panel, because I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you folks. So thank you very much, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Kelly and panel. Very insightful.